Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's book talk featuring Andrea Lowe and Valerie Liu, authors of Chinatown Pretty. I'm Lana Dubin, Collections Manager here at the Tenement Museum, and we are delighted to be in conversation with Andrea and Valerie today. Andrea Lowe is a freelance photographer living in Berkeley, California. Raised in Alaska and Texas, she moved to the Bay Area to study art at University of California, Berkeley. You can find her photos in the San Francisco Chronicle, the New York Times, and Wired magazine. Valerie Liu is a writer living in San Francisco. Born and raised in Sunnyvale, California, she studied journalism in high school and later at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She moved to San Francisco in the summer of 2008 and has been there ever since. She is also one half of Rice Paper Scissors, a Vietnamese pop-up restaurant. Welcome, Andrea and Valerie. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Of course. So to get us started, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your project. I'm going to start the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am Valerie Liu. I'm the writer behind Chinatown Pretty.
And I'm Andrea Lowe. I'm the photographer.
And today we're coming in live from Mr. Ju's. We have a restaurant here in Chinatown. Yeah, I hope you're enjoying some Chinese food tonight in New York or SF or wherever you are.
I want to thank you for our book just launched, and we're super excited to be here.
We'll be doing a lot of plans because that's our cue for the next slide.
Oh, thank you. It seems like it's freezing a little bit.
So a little bit about how we started. There we go. So when Andrea and I would go on these dim sum dates in Chinatown, we noticed that there was a distinct aesthetic. There was a lot of florals, patterns, big bucket hats, and puffy jackets. It would be clothes from different eras mixed with things like a Supreme hat. It was head turning, it was unexpected. Like who would have guessed a papa or grandma would be pairing, an obey hat with an outdoor pajama set.
Since 2014, so for more than 6 years, we've been photographing and chatting up seniors in historic Chinatowns in the SF Bay Area, so Oakland and San Francisco, as well as Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and Vancouver. And through hundreds of encounters, what we've learned is that asking these seniors about their clothes is a gateway to learn about their lives.
So how we start out is we just ask people, where is this from? Like, where did you get your hat? And one of the first people we met was Monta, who is this woman, lovely woman that's on the cover. And I had been living in Chinatown and sitting at this cafe every morning. And the first thing I would see were her shoes when she got off the bus. If you could go back to Monta. And there were jade shoes that kind of looked like something that you would find at Urban Outfitters, but it was on someone who was in their 80s.
And this is Shi Ping. She's also one of the first women that we met when we were out doing the project, and she was really jealous that everything she was wearing, her whole outfit had been gifted to her. So it's really common in Chinatown. Many of the seniors we meet are really resourceful, and they value reusing and repurposing everything, including hand-me-downs.
So clothes are kind of a gateway to learn more about their life histories. Clothes are kind of, they have within them stories weaved about where they came from, why they immigrated here, and what they did for work.
And this is our friend, Dorothy Kwok. She was actually born and raised in San Francisco, Chinatown. And she lived in single residence occupancy housing, SROs, with sometimes up to 10 people in a single room. And for work, her father delivered huge sacks of rice, 50 and 100 pound sacks, And she collected those cotton bags, and she actually crafted the dress she's making. So in a way, her dress really reveals a lot about her family history.
Next up, we have Miss Lee, who we met in Manhattan, Chinatown, at the Chinese Community Center on Mott Street. She had moved to the US 5 years previously and worked as a park gardener in Hong Kong prior. But yeah, as you can see, she's repping New York in her hat. So we try to honor their histories, document their diaspora, but it's also about honoring their current lives. We like to celebrate the active urban lives they lead now.
Like the Jungs, who we met in Los Angeles. And so staying physically active is really important to this couple. They had impressively been teaching a Chinese exercise routine in a local park every morning for the past 20 years.
We have another New Yorker in the house. We have CP, who was out getting groceries out on Canal Street, and she smartly protected her purse with that iconic thank you bag.
At the end of our encounters, we love to ask the seniors to share some advice, some wisdom, like what's your secret to a fulfilling life?
Mrs. Yang, who lived at the YWCA, which is an affordable housing building here in SF Chinatown, told us that when she was younger, she was a bit more of a perfectionist. And nowadays she has Alzheimer's, and she couldn't really remember her past, but she said, hey, listen, my grandkids are okay, my kids are okay. If I can remember things, that's great. If not, that's all right too.
And Buck Chu, who we had met before, but we ran into him while he was running errands, juggling this armful of bok choy and a load full of ginger. And you would never guess, but he's actually 96 in this photo because he looks so young. And he offered up some healthy eating tips for us. He cooks at home mostly and eats tons of fish and fresh veggies.
So aside from the questions, one thing we always do is always check the socks. That's like the Chinatown Pretty secret. And she was one of our most delightful surprises. We had checked her socks, and I guess her favorite salad is wine.
So we've gotten to meet hundreds of seniors over the years, and we've been really touched and by all their experience and life wisdoms that they've shared with us.
And we'll just end our presentation with Mr. Wu, one of the most iconic people we've met, and his signature red suit and handmade bolo tie, who says that, yeah, when you're young, you don't have to care about fashion, but when you're old, you have to. So yeah, this concludes our little presentation. I hope it gives you a good chance to see what the Chinatown Pretty aesthetic is all about, and some of the people we've met along the way.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. The photographs are wonderful, and there's so many more that are featured in the book. That was really just a kind of a smattering of some of the most colorful characters. And I have some questions for you about the process that you took to develop this body of work. So in the introduction, I spoke about how you both come from a photography and a journalism background. And I'm interested if you can talk more about how your professional backgrounds and those career paths have led you to create this body of work, and how they really form the beautiful book that is coming out today. Today is the release day.
A little about your background.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. We're having a little bit of connectivity issues, so hopefully I answer your question. But yeah, I'm a freelance photographer. I shoot a lot of food and product and still life. And what I'm naturally drawn to is in my work is a lot of color, a lot of textures. And I think that's why Chinatown is so stimulating for me. There's just, as you can see, they're not shy with their color choices, and there's just so much story and history built into like every corner when you just walk down the street. It's really just like a photographer's dream.
with me, in addition to doing Chinatown Pretty, I'm also one half of Rice Paper Scissors, which is a Vietnamese pop-up. And I think through Rice Paper Scissors, we kind of celebrate the kind of street outdoor life hustler spirit of like the women street food vendors in Vietnam. And one thing we really love about Chinatown is also the outdoor urban life, vivacious spirit of the people that live in Chinatowns, and especially the women too. They look fabulous while they're out and about grocery shopping or hanging out with their friends. So it's really a celebration of that element of that culture, the outdoorness of it, the activeness of it.
And what's interesting too is in the book, I noticed a lot of the most productive interviews happened on a Sunday when you were going to the markets. So I'm curious about how the role of food plays into the interview experience and also how you choose the seniors that you feature.
A little bit about our process. We go out to Chinatown usually 3 hours at a time, and we just take laps in hopes of like serendipitously meeting someone. And most people come out to Chinatown to do grocery shopping.
Right. And they might not necessarily be dressed up to be seen. And I think that's something they're oftentimes taken aback when we approach them. They're just like, this whole thing, like, oh, they don't think it's special, or they don't necessarily think they look beautiful. So that's has become part of the mission of our project, is to let them know that we admire them and that we want to learn from them, and that we think that they look awesome.
In the book, you too write about how sometimes when people are playing games in the street, like mahjong or other card games, that they're not receptive at all to speaking with you. And I'm curious if you could talk about a few instances involving you trying to, I guess, not coerce, but try to get a good interview with one of the seniors.
I think Columbus Park in Manhattan has been the hardest place to crack, because they got different card games over the tables, over near the statue and the benches, and they got their game on. So there's not much time to give them a compliment. And they usually have the most epic hats, which is the most devastating part. They usually have like these giant, beautiful hats that they then like kind of turn around as the sun moves. So yeah, usually the card game players are no-go for us. We just admire from afar. Too focused.
And getting the permission and having that conversation, it seems like that's almost as important as like the visual of the photograph itself.
Yeah, definitely. I think you'll see in a lot of portraits, they're very aware of the camera. We ask permission. We let them know that it's, this longer term project we're working on. And then lastly, we ask for a release from them. So that's translated in Chinese as well. Because it is important for us, them to be aware of the project.
We offer to send them a print.
Yeah, so thank you guys.
Yeah.
So there's a reciprocal exchange that goes on with the project. I'm interested too in learning more about how it changed from the original concept to now. And if you could talk more about your process and how it's changed over time since you started.
Yeah, the project started out with just a one-off article. Andrea and I hung out in Chinatown just to eat dim sum, and we both had this like physical reaction to the outfits that we saw. We're like, who are these people? So we just set out to kind of meet a few people, and once that was published, this nonprofit called the Chinatown Community Development Center, based here in SF Chinatown, reached out to us about doing a solo photo show, and then from there it kind of catalyzed us to start an Instagram and a blog. And then 6 years later, now we have this book. But also today is Chinatown Community Development Center's 43rd anniversary. So we're really excited to donate our affiliate sales from our bookshop.org page to them this month. And we're supporting a different nonprofit each month. But I think it's the community stakeholders like CCDC and a lot of other community orgs in Chinatowns across North America that really help connect us to the community they work closely with.
Yeah, I think when we first started the project, I was really admiring the style, and I think I didn't even realize maybe why I was so drawn to it. I think because it has so much history, you just see the stories there, and I think it made me so curious to find out more. And as we did the project more and we started partnering with the nonprofits like Chinatown CDC, I think they really infuse the project with even more meaning by giving more context to the project about how Chinatown as a neighborhood and as a landing pad for immigrants really fits into so many of their narratives of the people we photograph, and just like the mission of keeping Chinatown as a livable neighborhood, not just a place that tourists can buy souvenirs at, which is also great, but a place that has, that seniors can live in, that can actually be a place to be habitated, not just a shopping district.
And we're back.
Welcome
indoors.
back. Change of scenery.
We're gonna taste of the outside a little bit.
Beautiful. I love it that we get, just like in the photos, you have a range of backgrounds that you shoot in front of. This talk too, we will have a range of background scenery.
Yeah, every time we black out, we'll go to
a different location.
Like we promised. Different background. That was a moodier booth at Mr. Jew's at their lounge, Moongate Lounge.
Can you speak more about the restaurant that you're in? Can you tell us more about Mr. Jew's?
Yes, so our friends Brandon and Anna Lee, they opened up this modern Chinese restaurant in the heart of Chinatown, where actually my stepdad got married, first marriage here. But it's an iconic banquet hall, and Chinatown uses a lot of them where you have weddings, different sort of celebrations. So we feel so happy to celebrate our book launch in Chinatown.
Wonderful. And I'm really happy too that you can support a local business as well. Here in New York, of course, like restaurants have all been suffering, but particularly the restaurants in Chinatown. So it's wonderful too that you're using the proceeds of your book and donating them to the Chinatown Development Corporation. And I hope that we are able to put the link to that book sale in our chat. But getting back to our conversation, I was wondering how your dynamics as a partnership affect the work. And I was wondering if you could talk more about how the individual roles that you play and how your working relationship works.
Yeah. Well, I think Andrea has a really good eye. So she's the photographer. So I'm like, everyone looks good, but I think Andrea has done a really good job on like honing in on like capturing what the Chinatown Pretty aesthetic is. And it's about having a patchwork of different textures and eras and patterns. And I think she's done a really good job of like capturing the wholeness of them and getting them in a really happy place and smiling. Sometimes it involves me being in frame with them and then like slowly moving away.
That's a strategy. That I would say is a technique that we use, is like, you know, it's easier to take a photo when you're with other people. So, and sometimes they want to take a photo. So I'll do, okay, we'll do a group photo. And then we can move on to like a solo portrait. But yeah, I mean, Valerie is so friendly and extroverted. I mean, I think she really is so good at stopping the seniors and getting them to open up and to just like laugh and just be, to be more open with us. And we work with a lot of translators as well. So usually Valerie and the translator will go in and chat them up and really draw out stories from them if they have time. And then the second portion is we'll do a little portrait session, and then lastly we will have them sign the release, as we mentioned. But yeah, it's kind of a tag team effort because we don't want to overwhelm the people that we meet on the street. But yeah, I think it works really well. Like we have a lot of complementary skills, so it really came together for the project.
Great. I was curious too how you worked with the translators, because the people you interview come from a range of regions in China. And I was curious with the different linguistics and different languages with Cantonese and Mandarin, how you negotiate the language differences.
Language is a big part of it, and that's actually a big barrier. So we work with Cantonese and Toisanese speaking interpreters, since neither of us speak Chinese. We know a few key phrases, which is Josan, which is good morning, and Po Po Ho Lang, which means damn, you look good, grandma. But other than that, yeah, we rely on interpreters to help get their life stories, to understand what they've been up to that day. And then sometimes we don't have one. We rely on just body language, smiles. And there's actually it's amazing how much you can communicate with just like smiles and very enthusiastic thumbs up.
Like you were communicating with peace signs to me to change the slides. It's very similar. Yeah.
And there's a very small minority of people. There's a very small minority of people who speak Vietnamese, who are Chinese people that lived in Vietnam and immigrated over here after the Vietnam War. And I speak Vietnamese, so I would say maybe like 10% of people speak Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm. So you're able to conduct those interviews directly then. And I'm interested too in beyond the photographs that you send to them afterwards and that they receive their self-portraits. Are there particular seniors that you've had sustained relationships with over time?
Yeah, let's see. Sometimes actually after we send the prints, we include like a letter with the photos, and it has my phone number on it. So I'll get random calls from them thanking me. Sometimes it's in Cantonese, but that's really sweet. And like I think they really appreciate having the physical print. But yeah, sometimes we will meet up with them again, maybe to do a longer interview, just to visit them and check in with them. We've become friends with Dorothy Kwok, who was she in our slideshow? I think
yeah, with their rice bag dress.
Yes, right. She lives in Chinatown at the moment, and yeah, I don't know, we just hang out with her. She's gone out dancing.
She's gone to the Tonga room with
Val's
us.
birthday, and
I've seen her dropped off groceries to her a few times during COVID. But most people we meet on the street and just once, and that's kind of the ephemeral nature of street photography.
It's true. Yeah, they might just be waiting for the bus, and then it comes along, and they're just like, "Oh, gotta go," and you only have a chance to snap maybe a couple of pictures before they head out. But yeah, a lot of it's ephemeral. But yeah, if they want to be friends, we do like to hang
We're down for dim sum when this is all over.
They'll like push, we'll go visit, and they'll just push like all the fruit on us and try to give us lycees and stuff like their grandchildren. And it's really sweet. It's really sweet to stay in touch.
But yeah, CCDC is in touch with Manta, who's the cover woman. She is doing well. And then Buck Chu recently has passed on, but we made sure to get a copy of the book to his wife. And we used to have they used to serve us hot water and food in their apartment. So he's someone we got to visit quite a bit.
Beautiful. One of my favorite stories was a woman who wanted to go to church, and you invited her to an event, and you all were hanging out together, and she kept on trying to have you leave your own event to go get free food with her at church.
Betty.
So
cool. Her after swimming outfit with her yellow Crocs and like aquatic dress.
And like an apron too. I loved it.
Food.
I loved it. And it seems too like there's a lot of preparation in the clothing for a variety of situations. So I was noticing there will be like a lot of layers in case it's cold, or there'll be a lot of rain preparation. And even with Betty, she had this particular post-swim outfit. So I'm curious if you could speak more about this element of like preparing for different scenarios that you see as a trend.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in the Bay Area, you got to be prepared for sun, fog, different times of the day. There's just so many microclimates that you'll see. I mean, there's so much practicality in the way that they dress. You'll see sunbonnets and just like, 10 layers in one outfit in the spring, and sometimes gloves to protect themselves from the sun. And there's just so many layers and layers so that they can be ready for all kinds of weather. And I think just because they tend to run cold. So yeah, I think sun protection, layers. Another customization that we see a lot actually is hand sewn interior pockets. So they'll do it in the inside of their pant waist and inside of their coat pocket. You'll just see like hand stitched little pocket squares just to hold, whatever important daily things for them.
It also seemed too like there was a lot of customization. So a lot of the clothing, if they were purchased off the rack, there would be people who added an extra collar for warmth or an extra length here. Some changed out the buttons. So I was really interested by that element of like personalization in the clothing.
Yeah, a lot of the people we met used to work as seamstresses or worked in clothing factories. My grandma was actually a tailor. So yeah, they would sew secret pockets or add an inch here and an inch there to make the clothes work for them because they're out and about. So it's like being really utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to their resourcefulness too. They're just, I think the culture can be, they know how to make a lot out of little. So they can be very DIY at the same time. And I don't know, for us also, it just is like another special touch visually for their outfits. I think it's like, it makes us want to stop and ask them like, that looks handmade. Did you make it? Who made it for you? Where did you get that? Like all the questions. It just brings up a lot of curiosity for us.
There's a lot of like, my friend made this for me, or my sister knitted this for me, which I think is really sweet as well. It's personal.
There's an element of sentimentality that comes with the clothing. Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, can you speak about the clothing that you're wearing today?
Yeah, today I'm wearing my grandma's dress, my late grandma Anna Lee, who's in the Vancouver chapter of the book. And she came from Hong Kong and settled in Burnaby, which is near Vancouver, and had a lot of her clothes custom made in Hong Kong. And she's a big fan of like this type of sleeve and a lot of things with bows. And it really taught me looking through her closet that like well-made things last a long time. And it's something that you want to keep and that hopefully your grandchildren want to keep. And I love that kind of slow fashion that you see in a lot of seniors, whether they made it themselves or they got it made, or that the fact that they take care of it really well.
Yeah. Valerie's incorporated a lot of your grandma's pieces into her wardrobe. Her clothing has become a lot more colorful, I think, since we started the project. And I mean, it's awesome that you happen to be the exact same size as your grandma perfectly. Yeah, so I think we've definitely thought about the project and just even how we dress, and it's definitely influenced us. And my shirt is actually, I mean, something I think about a lot too. It's from Salvation Army. It's just a thrift store shirt, but I thought, oh, it has like a little puffy paint on it, like a little shimmery. I thought it's a little bit dressed up as a t-shirt though. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love thrifting, and I think, yeah, I love vintage clothes. And for the people we photograph, we might think, oh, that's so cool, like that vintage cardigan. But for them, it's like just clothes they've had for 40 years. They don't think about it in those terms.
So we have a question from the audience, and the person is saying that they have not been to Chinatown. I'm not sure where, but I'll ask you particularly about SF Chinatown. I've not been to Chinatown since before the pandemic. How has the area been affected?
In San Francisco, I think and across the whole city, actually, not just Chinatown, there's been some amount of closures, but I think community groups and the Merchants Association have put together a lot of parklets. So parklets I've associated with kind of newer restaurants, but it's great that a lot of like longtime Chinatown spaces are getting outdoor seating and kind of adapting to the time. So there is a sentiment of people missing Chinatown or not having been there, but I would say Chinatowns are still here. It's still really busy. There are people out all wearing masks, getting groceries. So I would say, if you haven't been in a long time, pay it a visit. It misses you. Yeah. I'm sure in the same way you miss it.
Yeah, in San Francisco today, the weather was beautiful, and yeah, it was really bustling out and actually really hard to find parking. So I think if that's a sign of just like the neighborhood being back, yeah, I think it was quite busy. And I live in the East Bay, so I live across the bay in Berkeley. So Oakland's my closest Chinatown now. And yeah, I've been back, and all the grocery stores are open. I mean, they're open air, so They feel really safe. Everyone wears masks in Chinatown, and they have been since the very start of the pandemic. But yeah, a lot of businesses are doing takeout, and
probably have always done takeout as well. So.
Yeah, so I think it's a good time to go check out Chinatown.
Mm-hmm. But I did notice the landscape has changed a lot. You know, like Portsmouth Square is our Columbus Park. It's Chinatown's living room here in San Francisco. And during normal times, there would be different groups. Like there would be the women's section playing cards, and there'd be the men's section playing cards. And today there's only 2 women, socially distanced, playing cards. The guys still huddled around together, which probably wasn't the safest thing, but you know, you don't see people parking it up on benches for hours on end. So yeah, it's part of the life has changed a bit, but hopefully I'll go back to normal in due time.
We can hope so. And it's interesting too. I see a lot of similarities between San Francisco and New York, with like the 2 Chinatowns almost. You have the very historic one in San Francisco, just like you have the very historic one on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then there's also the Oakland Chinatown, or Flushing, Queens Chinatown, which we have here. And I live in Flushing, and there was recently an article in the Times where they looked at different people over the city and who was wearing masks and who weren't, and the highest mask rate was in Flushing, Queens. So, woohoo, go Flushing!
And Flushing.
Side note about Flushing. I think last time when we were in New York, when we were photographing for the book, everyone was like, you gotta go to Flushing, which was amazing to see, but we were completely shut down by anyone we tried to approach. We weren't able to take any portraits there. And I just actually was thinking the one kind of side profile, just street style shot I got of a woman wearing a cool metallic. It was like one of those, usually it's a straw hat that folds up into kind of a fan. And it's kind of like a bell shape, but it was metallic reflective, so extra reflective for the sun. And then she also had a mask on, and this was a couple of years ago. And she had gloves on. So yeah, speaking to your point about people, you know, it's
trendsetters. Chinatown people are usually the trendsetters.
Yeah.
She's fully prepared for, again, any scenario that could potentially rise even years in advance. She was ready for the pandemic years ago. So I love it. And this woman too that you're describing, like there's so many beautiful portraits of people who have a great personal expression. I'm thinking of the gentleman who had pins and jewelry all over, and so he wasn't altering any of the clothing himself, but he was taking these other elements and adding it to his ensemble to personalize it. And I'm interested in that like little unexpected or a lot of expected additions. It seems to be like there's either, you know, always check the socks, like there's a little hint in an outfit, or the entire outfit will be bright red or metallic. It'd be great if you could talk about that a little bit.
What was it like meeting? That's Angie No Good, the man with all the pins on his hat. What was it like meeting him?
Yeah, we met him in San Francisco, and I remember, I think we were installing a photo show at 41 Ross in San Francisco Chinatown, which is an art and gallery space. And I was like hiking uphill there, and he was just leaning against a light pole on Grant Street, which is the busy kind of souvenir shop street. And he just was right there in front of me. And I was like, how have we never met this person in Chinatown before? And he just was like, I was like, he was really sort of an exception, I would say, to a lot of the people we meet, because he was like so punk, really. Mm-hmm. And you don't see that kind of style amongst like a senior Chinese set so often.
And his name, that's pretty punk.
Yeah.
Angie No Good, he goes by.
And we met him again at the bus stop as well. And he just exuded that same kind of attitude. But yeah, I think there's some people included in the book who really do put a lot of thought into their clothing. And then there's also people who are just like, oh, what? Like, I don't even try. Like, they're kind of embarrassed actually that we would like to photograph them. So you meet people across the spectrum of thought. And I think that's also what makes it special is sometimes there's extra care and sometimes it's just kind of effortless.
I love my favorite is wine. My favorite salad is wine.
Yes.
We'd seen her in that alleyway a few different times, and one time she was wearing a pink frog pinky ring. She had this little plastic,
Sanrio.
yeah, kind of like Sanrio-esque, and it just like makes me want to throw everything off the table. Like, what? How did this even happen? Where'd you even get that? There's such delights. Like, I wrote in the book that, like, you know, outfits are like a narrative, and sometimes there's like punchlines, and like that pinky ring was definitely like a kicker.
A total punchline. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because like there's a lot of function in the outfits. There you'll have like the sleeve covers for going to the market and protecting sleeves. There's a lot of function, but then there's also quite a lot of fashion that doesn't have any function whatsoever, like that pinky ring. It's really interesting to look at that dynamic, the fashion and function dynamic in a lot of the seniors.
Yeah, my business partner, Katie, who runs Rice Paper Scissors with me, always had a good fashion philosophy, which was always wear one thing that throws off the whole outfit.
Mm.
So it's for her, it's like really baggy gym socks with like a really nice dress.
I love it.
I do love that element of surprise and like lightheartedness.
Yeah.
I love it. We have another question from the audience. The person is curious to know how much of the clothing is American influence and how much is a vestige of the seniors' Chinese background.
I think it's a good mix.
Yeah, I would say 50% things they have from Hong Kong or bought in Chinatown. It's either like, it's really a patchwork. So it's like your Hong Kong pieces, it might be like a tailor-made suit or a tailor-made shirt with a Mandarin collar mixed with San Francisco fleece tourist sweater mixed with like a sunbonnet hat that's this wide that you got in Chinatown, and with your grandkids' Nikes. So it's a mix of gifted from America, Chinatown bought, something your sister knitted for you. Quite the combo.
Mm-hmm. And there were some too where they were like, oh, my grandson or my granddaughter just gave this to me, and they have no idea that they're wearing like high street fashion. There was a couple of those that I thought were really, really funny.
Yeah, I saw a Supreme hat in the wild at the Asian market the other day. I could not get a picture, but that happens quite often.
A lot of it's bootleg as well. So sometimes the brand will be misspelled. So those, I think we have like a small, yeah, I feel like that could be a whole chapter actually in the book. We organized it by city, but yeah, that's always a special find. And sometimes all in one outfit. There's actually a gentleman we met in Vancouver who had an Adidas jacket,
Reebok shoes,
Reebok
instead of Reebok.
Like a Nike hat, maybe
Nike hat,
bootleg Nike hat too. Like everything was bootleg, and
but all had the same patina, and it like worked together. He looked kind of like a vintage baseball player. That was in the Vancouver chapter.
It's beautiful. Yeah, well, book number 2, you'll organize by fashion style. So we have another question too. Once the seniors learn about the project, do they ever refer you to their friends or family members who also want to get their photo taken and share their story with you?
I wish we would give you like a referral bonus. We'll take you out to dim sum.
We could get a referral program going. That's been. I can't think of any time. Do
you want to talk about Estelle?
Yeah, well, we have done some portrait days, and I think one wonderful, I guess, family referral was from a woman I know named Kelsey, and she really wanted to bring in her grandma to one of our portrait days in SF Chinatown. And and so that woman was Estelle Kelly, and she has a few pages in the book dedicated to her, and we've photographed her on multiple occasions. But yeah, that was really nice to have grandkids bring in and nominate, in a way, their grandparents.
And the opening person for the Manhattan chapter was a man named Curry Puff, and his daughter had reached out to us. We met up in Columbus Park, and she spoke on his behalf because he's a bit hard of hearing, so we couldn't really do Q&A so much, but she told us about how he took a boat here to New York from China. It took him like a month. He was like 94 pounds, like super scrawny. and then, you know, went to school, went to the army, I believe, and then became one of the first Chinese American people to work for the MTA. And apparently he has like a lifetime pass, lifetime Metro card.
Ooh, that is a good bonus to have.
His name is Curry Puff because he wears a mini like pompadour that he like brushes back with the comb he keeps in his pocket.
He's very dapper gentleman. If any grandchildren are watching this talk right now, please contact Andrea and Valerie. They would love to photograph your grandparents. We also have another question, and that's about East Coast versus West Coast pohs fashions. So do you see, other than, you know, you'll have a Fisherman's Wharf sweater in San Francisco and a Mets hat in New York, are there any regional differences that you notice in the fashions?
I would say yes, and in the attitude too. I feel like it's a little bit harder in New York. People are a little rougher, just like more straightforward, trying to just get on with their day. Maybe more black puffy jackets. But I think what makes San Francisco really unique is because we have a lot of microclimates, which means a lot of layers, sometimes 11 layers. So that adds to the patchwork of the Chinatown Pretty aesthetic.
Right, and in Chicago, one kind of sweet detail we noticed, or actually we're told, is that people wear hats, but they have like a chin strap that they'll add themselves because it is the Windy City. And so they add it so that their hats won't blow away. So that was almost every single person who has a hat has added a chin strap.
Another functional alteration. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too, seasonally, when you travel, do you try to go, like, do you time it based on the weather? Because I could see in New York in the winter, no one wants to stop for a conversation on the street. So how do you factor in things like weather into your street photography?
Yeah, so when we shot for the book, we were out kind of in the spring of that year.
Yeah.
So we got some rainy days in New York and Chicago. And luckily there was the Chicago Public Library that hosted us at their Chinatown branch. And actually a lot of seniors hang out there already. There's a dedicated Chinese opera room. There's a dedicated kind of mahjong or card game room.
Actually, I think it rained quite a bit when we did Chicago and New York back to back. And actually our flight got canceled, I think, from Chicago to New York because the weather was so poor. But so you'll see a lot of like rainy day fashion, especially for New York, and Chicago's like a little overcast too.
I think in general, fall's always a good time because fall means layers.
Lots of layers. And I loved too the color coordination with a lot of them. Like you would have a full monochromatic purple where every single layer was, even if it was a different material from wool to silk to cotton, it would all be a purple color scheme. So I love how thoughtful it was that, you know, people were thinking when they got dressed for the day, if I were to take off this layer, I will still be color coordinated later on.
Yeah, exactly. I think in Chinese culture, there's a lot, you'll see a lot of in Chinatown, purple and red and pinks and florals as well. So I think that kind of that baseline of just like, oh, okay, colors acceptable, really adds so much to the outfits, because if you just go one neighborhood over, SF Chinatown is right next to the financial district. It's just like, you know, pre-COVID at least, it's like just navy and black pretty much. And then Chinatown is such a breath of fresh air.
I was thinking of that. I wore all black for most of my adult life until we started doing Chinatown Pretty, and like it made me realize how much joy it brought me to see these outfits, and I was like, I want to do that too.
Yeah, you can't see, but Valerie actually has like a dress on, so it's like, it's a look. It's really sweet.
It's a full look. I love that the project has influenced you in your fashion decisions. Has it influenced any other areas of your lives?
It's amazing to see how active these seniors are. They're in their 80s, 90s, and they're out getting groceries every day, hanging out with friends in the park, taking the bus across town to exercise with their group at 8 a.m. every day. We talk about Netflix and chillin', in our generation, they're definitely not doing that. So I think to me, it's a reminder of like really being an urban dweller and like using the park and going to dim sum, meeting up with friends, and also like keeping good posture, because my grandma and Ali included, a lot of the seniors are just know how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, they all had exquisite posture. And it's what's interesting too is even the ones who have canes, when they stand, it's like so prideful when they stand for the photographs, that, I mean, I associate good posture with pride in yourself, even though I may not have the best posture myself, and I'm proud of myself. So I just find that there's like a formality when you take their photos, that they're really, even if they didn't dress for knowing that they would have a portrait, they're putting their best foot forward in the way that they stand and they present themselves for the images.
Yeah, definitely. I think that also once you tell them, oh, she's a professional photographer, they get really excited and are like, oh, okay, it's a professional photo. And yeah, I think that they really love having the prints later. It's just like a special thing for them.
And there's Dorothy. She's really inspired us on how to live an active life.
Yeah. She, we've asked her, what is like your daily routine like? And she has quite a pretty like baked in routine, actually. Like she wakes up and she'll multitask, like listening to Democracy Now! While she does like stretch exercises, and she then she does Tai Chi, and yeah, she just has a whole routine that is like very impressive and pretty packed. Actually, she has
walking tours of Chinatown.
Yeah, she's still working.
She works as a historian and consults on documentaries about Chinatown.
Yeah,
she hangs out with us.
She's an activist as well. She's very informed about issues and
is learning, computer stuff, goes to computer classes, and is always learning. So she's very busy into her 90s.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring for a way to live. And I feel like there's also, when you're interviewing them, you have your final question for them, which is like, how do you live your best life, in so many words. They all have wonderful advice for you, but a lot of them focus on being active and eating healthy. And I was curious too, what foods have you been turning to during COVID, during the pandemic, as like a source of comfort for you? Because a lot of them speak about food as a source of comfort for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, even pre-COVID, I think dumplings are always a favorite go-to. It's just like the perfect like encapsulation of comfort. We just had some before we hopped on the call, actually.
I also had dumplings, but they were Trader Joe's frozen ones, so they weren't as good.
I like all dumplings.
During quarantine, I didn't eat as much Asian food, and I recently started eating Vietnamese food again. And I was like, fish sauce. I mean, oh, how I've missed you.
And earlier on, we were discussing kind of like reusing materials and hemming and mending and like this preservation idea. And one of the things I noticed too, despite plastic bag bans, there is a lot of plastic bag fashion and reusing of plastic bags. So I'm kind of interested in like almost this environmentalist and recycling perspective, that while it's not directly articulated, it seems like there's like a lot of value in reusing or using things until their useful life has run out. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about how you've seen that theme develop in the work.
Well, I'll leave it to Andrea, who's the thank you bag collector.
Yeah, I have a small collection of favorite thank you bags. Well, I think it speaks to their values. I think reusing, repurposing until that's useful life is over. That's just like ingrained, I think, in Asian culture.
You can never throw away a plastic bag.
Yeah, I mean, come on. And then so we see it a lot used as purses, even not just to bring haul home produce, but there's always just like a thank you bag dangling off somewhere. You know, you put tennis balls on the walkers, like there's like lanyards, you know, they love free swag as well. So the lanyards always get put to good use, and like the reusable tote bags, like there's tons of that. So yeah, I think you're right that maybe they're not necessarily thinking about saving the environment, but it's so baked into the culture of reusing.
And there's so many urban, what seems like urban modern values, like urban gardening and slow fashion, and like, you know, eating local, that have been practiced in Asia and especially in Chinatowns forever. People have these beautiful backyard gardens, or are able to grow in whatever space they have. People keep their clothes for a really long time. They use, you know, public transportation.
They mend clothes instead of, you know, just tossing it. They buy like fresh veggies every day. Like they'll just go, you know, you buy the day's worth every morning.
Love that. So I just love how there's multiple elements of their lifestyle that we can aspire to, and in a way, a lot of those elements are being talked about, but not really as like a legacy of looking to seniors. They're being talked about more as like contemporary ideas or hipster ideas or gentrified ideas. So I love that your project looks to people who are already living their life that way, and really respects and admires how they're living their lives. Well, it looks like we are almost out of time. Is there anything you would like to add?
Check out our book. And then we have a giveaway going on with Design Sponge right now, where we're asking people to send us a picture of the elders in their lives. So their parents, grandparents, or senior they know. Send us a photo, and you can win one of these prints that says "pohs ho lang," which is our kind of official, unofficial motto.
Yeah, and that giveaway is through Instagram, and I think it ends
on Friday.
Ends on Friday. So yeah, you can check out the Design Sponge Instagram for more details.
Wonderful. Both of my grandparents, both sets of grandparents are watching, and they will definitely be messaging me after this to make sure that I submit their photos. So
can't wait. Please do.
They're very fashionable too. So not that it's a competition. Well, Andrea and Valerie, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to discuss your book with you. And I can't wait to see what you produce next. And I wish you all the best with the success for your book launch.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks again.
Dolce, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Lana.